Good afternoon. This is the Chorus Call conference operator. Welcome, and thank you for joining the Italgas first quarter 2022 results conference call. As a reminder, all participants are in listen-only mode. After the presentation, there will be an opportunity to ask questions. Should anyone need assistance during the conference call, they may signal an operator by pressing star and zero on their telephone. At this time, I would like to turn the conference over to Ms. Anna Maria Scaglia, Head of IR. Please go ahead, madam.
Hi, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us. Today, we will walk you through Italgas first quarter 2022 results. I'm Anna Maria Scaglia, Head of IR, joined by Mr. Paolo Gallo, our CEO, and Mr. Gianfranco Moroso, our CFO. We will address any question you might have at the end of the presentation. I leave now the floor to our CEO, Mr. Gallo.
Thank you, Anna Maria, and welcome to everybody. I will start my presentation from slide number 2. There's a summary of our results of the first quarter of 2022. Our numbers benefited from a strong growth thanks to all investment we carried out in 2021, and thanks to the strong contribution we received from our ESCO businesses, in line with the trend that we have already anticipated in the last quarter of 2021. We have two negative impact. The first one is what is already very well known, is the X factor, 3.53%, that was not compensated, unfortunately, by inflation, not yet. And then the other one was the lower allowed return, 70 basis points. The overall sum of the two elements was equal to nearly 16 million euro, and we were able to compensate, nearly to compensate all this amount. Remaining on the other part, there has been a focus on cost, very strong. We were able, on a like-for-like basis, to reduce the cost, and therefore we were able to accelerate on the EBITDA, as you can see, and on EBIT, despite the large negative impact of the regulation. This, coupled with our very low cost of debt, led to an adjusted net income growth of 9.5% in the quarter. Let's move to the following chart, and let's get into the Capex investment. Capex reached 180 million euro, were lower than last year, as already anticipated, considering also the sum of investment are going to be completed very soon, like the Sardinia networks, or for example, the smart meters. Differently from last year, we booked very little working capital contribution in the first quarter. Gianfranco will explain you in the cash flow later, but the main driver has been the bonus, the so-called bonus gas, that in any event we will recover during the first semester. Net debt slightly improved, slightly reduced. We were expecting a larger reduction, but because of the bonus gas, it didn't happen, to 4.1 billion euro. Let's have a look at the Capex side. 180 million euro invested in the first period. Mainly, if you can see, the only area that has shown an increase is the digitization. That shows, it's really important because that shows our commitment to digital transformation of the network. Because in the first quarter, the investment relevant to smart meters has been close to zero, very close to zero, because the replacement plan is practically completed. Development and repurposing of the network still attract the majority of our investment. In Sardinia, as you see, we approach the completion. Few kilometers have been added to the overall network, but we have installed additional 6 new small-scale LNG storage and regasification plant. We have already reached 56 installed in Sardinia in service, our goal is around a little bit less than 90 to be installed during the plan period. In the period, we've also added 130 kilometers of new pipe, installing more than 100,000 smart meters, including the replacement of the faulty ones. If we move to the following slide, we can take a look at the result from an ESG point of view. The first slide is relevant to the greenhouse gases emission. In the quarter, we saw an increase in terms of emission from gas leakages. The overall emissions increased in respect of 2021 first quarter emission by 8.6%. The increase is mainly driven, it's mainly driven by the gas leakage and by the strategy that we have adopted in the first quarter in respect to the last year. In fact, we decided not only to increase the number of kilometers investigated. The increase has been almost 50% more than last year. Remember that we have the goal in 2023 to inspect twice per year the overall network, but also because we decided to attack the area that, according to the data collected during 2020-2021, as, let me say, showed more possibility to find leakages. And in fact, we found more leakages, but the good things is that the amount of cubic meter of natural gas leaked per kilometer survey is decreased. So that is a very good news, meaning that we were able to also reduce significantly the time needed to fix the problem. In general, if you look at the number in terms of percentage of the volumes injected, our leaks are still impressive, very low. Relevant to vehicle, the CO2 emitted by the vehicle remain constant, slightly decrease due to the slight decrease of kilometers that were consumed during the first quarter of 2022. If we take a look at the other element that we normally consider is the net energy consumption, that was down by more than 7% in relation to 2021. The main contribution in absolute term came from industrial gas consumption, 11 terajoule lower than last year, thanks to the plan that we are putting in place to improve the performance of our preheating system. And that is not going to be ended. We still have a lot of preheating system to be upgraded, refurbishment, and we expect to bring down the specific consumption that today is at 1.16, below 1. It's the number of cubic meters used to preheat the system for 1,000 cubic meters to be preheated. Electricity consumption was lower due to the efficiency that we introduced in Italgas Acqua. And as I anticipated, vehicle consumption reflect, as I said before, the lower number of kilometers traveled. That is the picture relevant to the ESG parameters that we consider. Remember that on those two items, we have the target set by last strategic plan in 2027, 30% reduction in CO2 emitted, 25% reduction in the net energy consumption. Now let's take a look at the result, economic result. First of all, let me say that in the first quarter of 2022, we don't have any adjustment. While in 2021, as you remember, we adjust our numbers to exclude the cost of the bond buyback transaction that we carried out in February 2021. When we compare the first quarter of 2022 with the same period of last year, I'm trying to underline the major facts. As already anticipated, the impact of the regulation was about 16 million euro lower, compensated by RAB growth, 10 million, and higher contribution from the ESCO, 17 million. Overall expenses increased by 5 million euro, driven by our ESCO activity. Depreciation and amortization was up by 4 million euro due to the higher Capex recorded last year. Tax rate, Gianfranco will explain later. And as a result, our adjusted net profit increased by 9.5% in respect to the first quarter of 2021. Let's try to analyze a little bit more revenues and cost. Regarding the revenues increased by 6.2% in respect of the first quarter of 2022. As you can see, the RAB growth and tariff adjustment contributed for nearly 12 million euro, out of which 10 million are related to RAB increase. We book about 4 million euros additional in a split between previous year adjustment and other regulated revenues as a delta. And then we have the two major elements, the increase driven by the ESCO, mainly by the ESCO, 23.4 million driven by the ESCO, Seaside and Ceresa mainly, and by Gaxa. And the other one is the nearly 60 million of the regulation impact on our business, WACC review and X factor. Let me say regard to elements about the ESCO. ESCO contributed in line with the trend that we have already seen in the last quarter of 2021, even though I would say probably slightly better than what we have anticipated. And from Gaxa point of view, increase of the revenues in Gaxa are mainly driven by the increase of the commodities. And as you know, we have announced at the end of March, beginning of April, we have agreed to sell the majority of the company, 17%, to Edison, retaining a minority stake. This implies that starting from the next quarter, the company won't be anymore consolidated line by line once the transaction closes, and the closing of a transaction is expected during this week. Last element to be mentioned is very little and limited contribution of the smart meter replacement. The reason being is that we have very little numbers still to be replaced, are the most difficult, the most secluded, the most difficult to access because the customer does not give the permission to do it. So that's the reason why I would probably say that the replacement of the traditional smart meter is really completed. Still few are left outside. Another picture of the revenues is given in slide number 9. It's a different way to see. It underlines the difference regarding distribution, tariff contribution for meter replacement, the one that I just mentioned. We didn't reach the 1 million because very limited number has been replaced, and the other distribution revenue. You can see very clearly the strong increase in the other revenues driven by our ESCO business. Comment on the cost. First of all, let me say that on a like-for-like basis, we were able to achieve another strong, important cost reduction, 8.6% in respect of last year. We will see in a moment which is the major component. On the other side, because of the increase of revenues from the ESCO point of view, we have recorded an increase of cost for 14 million euro, with an EBITDA, and you can make an easy calculation, with an EBITDA of the ESCO business in the range of 15%. We had a negative contribution from the white certificate of nearly €500,000. So if you take a look at the other view of the cost, you can understand where we were able to gain significant efficiency in respect of last year. We were able to reduce the next external cost significantly on the distribution area, while you can from a net labor cost, if you add what we spend more in the other activity, well, with what we spend less in the distribution, the net is zero, and the other increase significant is on the next net external cost that, as I said before, is driven by the ESCO. Now I'm leaving the floor to Gianfranco for the remaining part of the presentation. And then we will be here for any question you may have at the end of the presentation. Thanks.
Thank you, Paolo. We are now on the EBIT on slide 12. EBIT amounted to 242 million, marking a significant increase of more than 9%. This increase is the result of a 16 million euro increase in EBITDA, driven by a remarkable increase in revenues that we have already commented for 21 million euro, while the cost increased for just of 5 million euro. The other block in the chart is related to the D&A, almost 4 million euro higher than the previous year, mainly driven by the higher depreciation related to the Capex executed in the last 12 months, that, as you know, include the Capex of 2021, which reached the level of more than 865 million euro. Commenting the net profit and moving to slide 13, adjusted net profit after minorities reached a level of 89 million, up of the same level of the EBIT, 9.5%. The net financial expenses were 14 million, just 0.4 higher than last year, not considering the special item for the bond buyback performed in February 2021. This result was achieved despite higher average gross debt related to the pre-funding activities that we carried out in 2021. The contribution from associates decreased by 0.3 million. Nothing especially to comment, except that in the coming quarters, this line will reflect also the contribution of the remaining minority stake in Gaxa. We accounted finally for 34.5 million of income taxes, marking a tax rate of 26.9%, just above last year at 26.5%. We are still benefiting of the super bonus tax scheme and also the ACE scheme that drove the result to the tax rate that you see in the slide. Now moving to the cash flow. Our operational cash flow reached almost 200 million euro and was able, as you can see, to fully cover the Capex executed in the first quarter. In addition to the usual component, net profit before minorities and depreciation and other non-cash items that accounted for 95 million euro, net working capital brought a positive contribution of 10 million euro. I would like to spend a few words on the latter, as you might have noticed that the significant variation compared to the first quarter 2021, and the figure more closer to first quarter 2020 in terms of contribution by the working capital. Let me say that last year we benefited from a particularly strong billing seasonality. This year, several items impacted the working capital that we had in the first quarter. In particular, we faced almost 50 million euro negative related to the so-called bonus gas, reducing the positive impact of the billing seasonality in the first quarter to 94 million euro, about 50 million euro less than the first quarter of 2021. The impact of the bonus gas has to be considered temporary and will be recovered from the XEA with a delay of a few months. So I will expect that this phenomenon will reduce and go back to the usual figure in the second quarter. Also explaining other components, extraordinary component of the low working capital, on the negative side, we have also reported the higher amount of receivable due to super bonus and eco bonus for about 12 million euro. This is the consequence of the strong impact of the activity of the ESCO that we have already commented. Capex brought a cash outflow of about 107 million, resulting in a free cash flow at the end of the quarter of 21.6 million. On the right side, the financial investment and disposal block includes the net impact of the cash outflow to acquire, as already announced, a 6% stake in Picarro and the deconsolidation of Gaxa intercompany debt. At the end, this resulted in a net debt reduction of 25.3 million in the quarter. Let me now make an update of our debt structure at the end of this first quarter. Nothing in particular to be commented. Thanks to the exercise, the liability management and the new bond issuance carried out last year, also combined with the new bond and the new banking loans executed toward the end of last year, we retain now a significant amount of cash, more than 1.25 billion euro available on bank accounts. In addition to that, let me underline that we continue to leverage one of the lowest average cost of debt, less than 1%. I would add well inside the 1%. A very limited exposure to interest rate volatility because more than 92% of our debt is fixed with a tenor of around 6 years and substantially no refinancing risk for the next 2 years. The residual amount of the 22 bond has been repaid last January. Next bond repayment, as you know, as you can see also in the slide, is going to be the one expected in March 2024. Two comments on the balance sheet on the following slide 16. Net invested capital amounts to almost 7.2 billion euro, with an increase of almost 85 million euro compared to the end of 2021. Fixed capital dropped by 149 million, mainly as a result of the reclassification among assets held for sale. On the liability side, consolidated debt was 4.955 million, including the impact of IFRS 16 for 77 million euro, with a decrease of 25 million euro compared to the year end 2021. I leave now the floor back to Paolo.
Just to close with a few remarks, we reported a strong top line driven by RAB increase in ESCO despite the heavy negative regulatory impacts. Cost efficiency continue, driven by digital transformation of the company. We reach a partnership with Edison regarding Gaxa to strengthen the commercial effort and we maintain a minority stake there. We also enter into a minority stake with Picarro, as already discussed. Just a remark on Greece. We should close the DEPA infrastructure by, let's say, during probably toward the end of the month of May. And immediately thereafter, I hope to see all of you in person when we are going to present to you the new strategic plan 2022-2028. It will be done on June 15. We will announce our strategy, and we will provide you with the usual targets update for 2022. So I'm anticipating the answer to your question, which are the guidance. Guidance will be given on June 15. Thank you. I will give you the floor back to you for questions, and we will answer any question you may have. Thank you.
Excuse me, this is the Chorus Call conference operator. We will now begin the question and answer session. Anyone who wishes to ask a question may press star and one on their touchtone telephone. To remove yourself from the question queue, please press star and two. Please pick up the receiver when asking questions. Anyone who has a question may press star and one at this time. The first question is from Javier Suarez with Mediobanca. Please go ahead, sir.
Thank you for the presentation and for taking my questions as well. Three questions. The first one is on the cost cutting that has been impressive. So if you can elaborate on the main or the key managerial actions that are behind, and if there is still a space or room in your view to continue reducing the cost base of the company on the traditional activity. The second question is on the regulatory framework in Italy. The competition decree has not been published yet. That goes beyond obviously the mandate of the company management. But can you share with us what are the latest on your dialogue with the Italian administration? And it is fair to say that the delay in the approval of that competition decree could mean that the company is going to reallocate Capex to the Greek subsidiary and activities there. And the third question is on the big picture. Repower EU is a radical change in the energy strategy for the continent. So from your point of view, is there a change in the view that Europe looks at gas distribution infrastructure? Any comment on European energy policy could be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Xavier. The first question, cost cutting. As you know, the traditional way to reduce the cost we have been using, let me say, in 17, 18, 19, then really we were able to achieve the most out of those days. What we are seeing now is a different cost cutting. So it's not a traditional anymore. It's mainly driven by digital transformation. And sometimes we ourselves are astonished, let me use this strong word, by the numbers that we are able to reach. And that is mainly driven by the effect of the digital transformation. Let me make you just an example to make it clear. Maybe it's a small one, but give you the idea that the cost cutting is everywhere in the company. You have seen that we have reduced the number of kilometers traveled by our cars. Why? Because we are comparing periods that are very similar. And on the contrary, if you look at the two periods, first quarter of 2021 and 2022, we have less restriction in 2022. For example, we have seen a significant contribution in that direction by a new application that was developed by the Digital Factory to produce estimate of cost for new connection, completely from our control center, from our offices, without the need to go in person close to the customer to see which is the cost related to the intervention. That is a saving that we have seen in kilometers traveled. That is a saving in CO2 emitted. That is a saving in amount of gasoline or CNG used, but is also an efficient way to use the time of our personnel. And I can continue with other examples like that brought by the digital transformation of the company. So I'm expecting that this trend will continue and will not come only from, like in the past, in the traditional way. Okay, I'm reviewed the procurement activity, that is the saving. I have reviewed the organization, that is the reduced number of people, and so forth. That is not going to happen anymore in such a strong way. It will come from the digital contribution on our day-by-day activity. On the second question is very simple. The DL Concorrenza is still in discussion at the Parliament. There are thousands of requests of modification. You know that the overall situation is not. I mean, probably the government is a different priority. If we have to make an estimate, we will probably. We'll probably say that by mid-year, so end of June, beginning of July, we should see something about this DL Concorrenza to become law. On the last one, I'm sorry to say I disagree with your view about the Repower EU. Repower EU does not change the energy or ecological transition. It does only accelerate. To make it clear, Repower EU envisage how to replace the gas that is coming from Russia. 155 billion of cubic meter of gas coming from Russia will be replaced by many interventions by 2030. But I want to underline two of them that are extremely important from our perspective. The first one is the biomethane. European Commission foresee that by 2030 in Europe, in the European Union, there will be 35 billion cubic meters of biomethane produced. And it's a very challenging objective, very extremely challenging, considering, and out of the 35, probably around 8 will be in Italy. In Italy, today we produce around 500 million cubic meter. So moving from 500 million to 8 billion it's an incredible effort. The remaining, so 25% is about biomethane. Another 25% by 2030 is the hydrogen produced locally or imported. And we are talking about the green hydrogen. So out of 155, 50% will be replaced by, let me use this term, local production, biomethane and hydrogen. And that's a challenge for everybody, and it's a challenge also for, and especially for, the gas distribution companies. They need to be prepared to accept in their network different kinds of gases, such as biomethane, hydrogen, synthetic gas. So the acceleration that everybody has to do between now and the next few years is to make the networks available to accept those gases. Otherwise, those objectives will never be reached. Imagine that in the 54-55, the biomethane production was half of the 35 billion cubic meters, and the hydrogen was 1/3. So in other terms, the European Union, to bring to zero the dependence to the Russian gas, has set very, very extremely challenging objective in which the gas infrastructure will play a crucial role in order to have the opportunity to meet those objectives. Thank you, Xavier, for your questions.
Many thanks.
Next question, please.
The next question is from Emanuele Oggioni with Kepler Cheuvreux. Please go ahead, sir.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the presentation, for taking my question as well. The first one is on the ATEM Naples 1. You lost the appeal, so the Council of State rejected your appeal. So I wonder, until this ATEM will be consolidated, and how much could be the industrial reconstruction value you could cash in and when during the, I suppose this year or early next year. Thank you.
Well, I am happy to take your question. About the timing and the timing for the consolidation, I would add, we are considering all the procedures that are in place and have to be completed. We expect to deconsolidate the ATEM by the end of the year, not earlier. In terms of the values, the value is, of course, one of these procedures that I mentioned, because it has to be exchanged and agreed between all the parties involved. I can give you a figure of a rough 300 million euro. And I can add that we can expect a material capital gain based on this value and on the value that we have in our balance sheet.
Thank you.
Next question, please.
The next question is from Stefano Gamberini with Equita SIM. Please go ahead, sir.
Good afternoon, everybody. Also from me, a few questions. The first regarding the M&A situation. Do you have some changes on the market, or everybody are still waiting for the new competition decree and what could be the new competition situation in forthcoming months in the second part of the year, or there are some new deals that could be on the table? The second regarding the situation in Belluno. You recently won also at National Court, Administrative National Court. What are the next steps and when you could have the definitive final green light for this concession? And finally, regarding these revenues from eco-bonus and energy savings, in the first quarter the growth was substantial and very, very high. Could we expect the same trend in forthcoming quarters, or are there some seasonality in this quarter? Finally, if I can add just a few comments, if you can, on Greece. After 6-7 months, I don't know if you have some chance to speak with the regulator in Greece, or to have a little bit a better idea of the situation of these networks, and if you have some comments to share with us. Many thanks.
Okay, let me start with the M&A. We have well, we cannot disclose at this time anything, but we have some deal going on. Hopefully, it will be announced soon in the second quarter. Let's see. If we do a nice job, we will be able to announce by the time. So there are some movements, still not as much as we would like to see, but we had something on which we are significantly working, and it's quite interesting. But more than that, I cannot say. On the Belluno side, you know that we won at the Consiglio di Stato against the Comuni, so that part of the court is closed. Against the other operators, we won at TAR, and then is going to have at Consiglio di Stato in the month of June, let me say, a discussion, and then we expect probably either before August or immediately after the final judgment on Consiglio di Stato, that is Belluno. And just to make a remark, we submitted the offer was September 1st, 2017, 5 years. ESCO revenues, no, we don't have any seasonality. That is an increase that we expected to have, slightly higher than we expected, and that is mainly due to the fact that even it has been changed, the super bonus scheme, we were running on those interventions that were supposed to achieve 30% completion by end of June, even though now has been, I think, postponed. But we didn't know before, so we were running about putting ourselves on the safe side about a number of interventions that for which 30% should have been completed by end of June to avoid to lose the super bonus, the under 10% advantages. So if I have to say, I'm expecting that those level of revenues will continue to stay in the quarters to come. Regarding Greece, as you know, we are still waiting the final approval by the regulator. It should arrive, let me say, any days in this, let me say, in this week or maybe next week. That is the time schedule that we are expecting. In the meantime, we have started to talk about the regulator on a regular basis. The regulator is waiting for us to come and become the owner of the 3 companies to start the discussion about the new regulation that will apply starting from January 1st, 2023. So we are ready. We have studied. Now we know a little bit better the companies, not as good as we would like to see, because there are still some limits imposed by the funds about the discussion we may have with those companies, but we have increased. As you know, we have appointed, let me call it the project manager for Greece since March. She's working hard on all this subject. She's been several times in Greece. She's been in touch with the management of the 3 companies. So more and more we are getting use of those companies. But of course we are waiting for the closing to really enter into the company and see what's going on. But we are quite confident that the things are progressing well. That's it. Thank you.
Many thanks.
Next question, please.
The next question is from Davide Candela with Intesa Sanpaolo. Please go ahead.
Hi there, good afternoon, and my question had already been addressed. Thank you.
Operator, are there any further questions?
As a reminder, if you wish to register for a question, please press star and 1 on your telephone. Once again, if you wish to ask a question, please press star and 1 on your telephone. Ms. Scaglia, gentlemen, there are no more questions registered at this time.
Okay, so many thanks. The IR team will be available in case there are any further emerging questions. Thank you very much.